She was built to end wars without firing a single shot. Over 1,000 feet of nuclear-powered steel, carrying 90 aircraft, 5,000 souls, and enough firepower to level a small country. For 50 years, the USS Nimitz has been the most feared warship on Earth. She launched a doomed rescue into the Iranian desert. 8 helicopters, 8 dead, and a catastrophe that rebuilt American special operations from the ground up. She drew first blood against Gaddafi's air force when 2 F-14 Tomcats shredded a pair of Libyan fighters in under 60 seconds. She stood silent off the coast of Beirut while terrorists held Americans hostage. Her flight deck a loaded gun that never needed to fire. She shielded oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, enforced no-fly zones over Iraq, and rained precision bombs on the Islamic State. And in 2025, on her final deployment, she sailed straight into the South China Sea. One last warning to anyone watching. This is every mission of the USS Nimitz. USS Nimitz, CVN-68. Displacement, over 100,000 tons. Length, 1,092 feet. Beam, 134 feet. Flight deck width, 252 feet. Powered by 2 A4W nuclear pressurized water reactors generating 260,000 shaft horsepower. Top speed, over 30 knots. Flight deck spanning 4.5 acres, accommodating up to 90 fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters. Crew complement, 3,200 sailors plus 2,480 air-wing personnel. Unlimited range. Commissioned May 3, 1975, by President Gerald Ford at Naval Station Norfolk. April 1980. 52 American hostages have been held inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran for 172 days. Every diplomatic channel is dead. Every back-channel negotiation has collapsed. President Carter has exhausted sanctions, frozen Iranian assets, and severed relations. None of it has moved the needle. The only option left is a military rescue so complex, so dangerous, that most Pentagon planners think it's suicide. Operation Eagle Claw. And the entire mission rests on the flight deck of a single aircraft carrier anchored in the Arabian Sea, the USS Nimitz. The plan involves a staggeringly complex multi-stage insertion across hostile territory. 8 RH-53D Sea Stallion helicopters launch from the Nimitz's flight deck. They fly 600 miles through Iranian airspace at extremely low altitude to avoid radar detection. They must thread through mountain passes and desert corridors, navigating without GPS, which doesn't exist yet, using only inertial guidance and terrain following radar. Their destination is a remote salt flat codenamed Desert 1, deep inside Iran's Dasht-e-Kavir Desert. Desert 1, the helicopters are supposed to refuel from C-130 Hercules transport planes that have landed separately. Then they fly another 260 miles to a mountain staging point outside Tehran. The rescue force, Colonel Charlie Beckwith's Delta Force operators, and a contingent of Army Rangers will hide through the day and storm the embassy compound the following night. Agents inside Tehran have pre-positioned trucks for the final approach. The extraction calls for the helicopters to land in a soccer stadium near the embassy, load the hostages, and fly to an airstrip seized by Rangers where C-141 transports will be waiting. Every link in the chain must hold. If one breaks, the entire mission collapses. The helicopters lift off from the Nimitz at dusk on April 24th. 8 machines crossing into hostile airspace with no fighter escort, no air superiority umbrella, no electronic warfare support. Just rotor blades, darkness, and hope. Within the first 2 hours, the mission begins unraveling. Helicopter number 6 develops a catastrophic hydraulic failure in its primary flight system. The crew lands in the desert and is picked up by another helo, down to 7. Then helicopter number 5 flies directly into a haboob, massive suspended dust cloud that stretches for miles and reduces visibility to absolute zero. The pilot, disoriented and unable to navigate, turns back to the Nimitz, down to 6. 6 helicopters reach Desert 1. But on the ground, the crew of helicopter number 2 discovers a cracked hydraulic line in the rotor assembly. The bird is unflyable. 5 helicopters remain. The mission requires a minimum of 6. Non-negotiable, because the math on passenger capacity doesn't work with fewer. Beckwith radios the Pentagon. The answer comes back from President Carter himself: abort. But the nightmare isn't over. During the chaotic withdrawal in pitch darkness and swirling dust, helicopter number 3 repositions to refuel from a C-130. The pilot misjudges the approach. The helicopter's rotor blade clips the fuselage of the Hercules. Both aircraft erupt into a massive fireball. The ammunition cooks off. Fuel bladders explode. 8 American servicemen, 5 Air Force crew from the C-130 and 3 Marines from the helicopter die on the sand. Their bodies are left behind in the wreckage as the surviving force evacuates. Nimitz receives the battered survivors back on her deck. The mission is an absolute catastrophe. The wreckage at Desert One is displayed on Iranian television. The political fallout contributes to Carter's loss in the November election. But the failure does something no success could have done. It forces the American military to confront its broken Joint Service Command structure. The Holloway Commission tears apart the decision-making failures. Within 7 years, the Goldwater-Nichols Act reforms the entire chain of command, and the United States Special Operations Command, SOCOM, is born. Eagle Claw died in the desert, but it built the machine that would produce the most lethal special operations force in human history. August 1981. President Reagan has drawn a line in the Mediterranean. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi has claimed the entire Gulf of Sidra as sovereign Libyan territory, a massive body of water stretching 150 miles from the coast that he declares a line of death. Under international law, the claim is illegitimate. The Gulf of Sidra is open ocean. Reagan decides to prove it. He orders freedom of navigation exercises directly into the disputed zone. 2 full carrier battle groups steam south. The USS Forrestal carrying F-4 Phantoms. The USS Nimitz carrying the finest air superiority platform on Earth. The 14A Tomcats flown by VF-41, the Black Aces. Gaddafi has been warned. He responds by scrambling fighters. The Grumman F-14A Tomcat is the U.S. Navy's premier fleet defense interceptor in 1981. Its defining feature is the variable sweep wing, which adjusts from 20 degrees in the fully swept position for supersonic dash to 68 degrees fully extended for low-speed maneuvering and carrier approaches. The AWG-9 weapon system, the most powerful airborne radar of its era, can simultaneously track up to 24 targets at ranges exceeding 100 nautical miles and engage 6 of them at once with AIM-54 Phoenix missiles. For close-in engagements, each Tomcat carries AIM-9 Sidewinder infrared heat-seeking missiles and AIM-7 Sparrow semi-active radar-guided missiles, plus an internal M61A1 Vulcan 6-barrel 20mm rotary cannon. For 2 days, the exercises proceed. Libyan jets probe the formation. Pairs of MiG-23s and Su-22s make aggressive passes at the carrier group. Simulating attack runs before veering away at the last second. The Tomcat pilots hold their fire. Rules of engagement require hostile intent. The enemy has to shoot first. August 19th. 0700 hours local time. 2 Black Aces Tomcats launch from the Nimitz on a routine combat air patrol. Fast Eagle 102 is crewed by Commander Henry Hank Kleeman, one of the most experienced fighter pilots in the Navy, with Lieutenant Dave Venlett as radar intercept officer in the back seat. Fast Eagle 107 carries Lieutenant Lawrence Music Muksinski with RIO Lieutenant Jim Luca Anderson. They're flying cover for a missile exercise when Venlett's scope lights up. 2 contacts inbound from the Libyan coast. Su-22M fitters, closing fast in a head-on intercept profile. The 2 formations merge at a combined closure rate exceeding 1,000 knots. At less than a mile, the lead Libyan fitter does the unthinkable. He fires an AA-2 Atoll infrared-guided missile directly at Fast Eagle 102. The missile streaks past Kleeman's canopy and misses. That single trigger pull changes everything. Postal intent is confirmed. Weapons free. Kleeman brakes hard, rolls his Tomcat to acquire the target, and launches an AIM-9 null Sidewinder, the newest variant, with an all-aspect seeker head that can lock from any angle, not just from behind. The Sidewinder tracks true and detonates against the Su-22's engine exhaust. The fitter disintegrates in a ball of fire. Simultaneously, Muksinski and Fast Eagle 107 has maneuvered behind the second Su-22. He fires his own AIM-9L. The missile guides perfectly. The second Libyan fighter explodes. Both engagements are over in under 60 seconds from the first Atoll launch. 2 Libyan pilots eject. One is recovered alive by Libyan search and rescue. The other is reported killed. No American aircraft or crew sustain a single scratch. It is the first aerial combat victory for the F-14 Tomcat. Fast Eagle 102, the jet that scored the first kill, is now preserved at the Commemorative Air Force Museum in Midland, Texas. And the message sent that morning echoes across every contested waterway of the Cold War. The United States Navy will fly where international law says it can fly. And anyone who challenges that doctrine will burn. June 14, 1985. TWA Flight 847, a Boeing 727 carrying 153 passengers and crew, is hijacked minutes after takeoff from Athens by two Lebanese Hezbollah gunmen armed with pistols and grenades. They seize the cockpit and force the pilots to Beirut, and to Algiers, and back to Beirut again. The plane ping-pongs across the Mediterranean while the world watches in horror. During the second stop in Beirut, the hijackers single out U.S. Navy diver Robert Dean Stetham. They beat him savagely. Then they shoot him in the head and dump his body onto the airport tarmac. His murder is broadcast on international television. The Pentagon moves instantly. The USS Nimitz, operating in the central Mediterranean, cancels a scheduled port call to Livorno, Italy, and turns east at flank speed. Over 30 knots, her two nuclear reactors driving 4 propeller shafts at maximum output. Accompanying her, the nuclear-powered guided missile cruiser USS South Carolina, the destroyer USS Kidd, and the replenishment oiler USS Kalamazoo, a separate 3-ship amphibious force led by the helicopter carrier USS Saipan, carrying 1,500 combat-ready Marines of the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit, breaks off a port visit to Gibraltar and steams eastward. The carrier strike group projects power through concentric rings of layered deterrence, designed to control a sphere of ocean and airspace hundreds of miles in diameter. The outer ring consists of guided missile cruisers and destroyers equipped with the Aegis Combat System, which integrates the SPY-1 phased array radar with standard missiles to engage incoming aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic threats simultaneously. The carrier's own air wing provides the offensive punch. Fighter, strike, and electronic warfare aircraft operating in a 500-mile combat radius. Marine amphibious forces embarked on nearby assault ships provide a credible ground intervention capability within helicopter range of any coastline. Within 48 hours, the Nimitz is parked in the eastern Mediterranean off the coast of Lebanon. Her flight deck is a hive of activity. F-14 Tomcats cycle through constant combat air patrols overhead. B-6 intruders sit loaded with 1,000-pound bombs. BA-6B prowlers stand ready to jam every Lebanese and Syrian radar within 200 miles. The message to Hezbollah is blunt and unmistakable. Release the hostages, or we have the capability to dismantle Beirut block by block. But the situation on the ground defeats raw military power. The remaining hostages, over 30 Americans, have been removed from the aircraft, dispersed into Hezbollah-controlled apartment buildings, basements, and safe houses across southern Beirut. The conventional military strike would kill the very people it's trying to save. Delta Force rescue, considered and planned, is deemed impossible, given the hostage dispersal across a densely packed urban maze controlled by thousands of armed militia fighters. The Nimitz holds station for nearly 2 months. She doesn't fire a shot. She doesn't launch a strike. But her presence, the constant thunder of jet engines overhead, the silhouette of a 100,000-ton warship on the horizon, forces Hezbollah leadership to calculate every decision under the shadow of total annihilation. Negotiations, mediated by Syria's Hafez al-Assad, eventually secure the release of all remaining hostages by June 30th. Nimitz stays on station through August, a watchful predator that never needed to bite. Sometimes the most powerful mission isn't the strike. It's the weight of knowing the strike could arrive at any second. September 1988. The Iran-Iraq War, the longest conventional war of the 20th century, has turned the Persian Gulf into the most dangerous waterway on Earth. Both Iran and Iraq are deliberately attacking neutral commercial shipping. Oil tankers flying the flags of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and a dozen other nations are being struck by anti-ship missiles, mines, and small boat attacks. Global oil supply is at risk. Kuwait approaches the United States with a desperate request: protect our tankers. Washington agrees and devises a provocative solution. 11 Kuwaiti oil tankers are re-registered under the American flag. Any attack on those vessels is now legally and militarily an attack on the United States. The operation is codenamed Earnest Will, and the USS Nimitz is ordered to enforce it. The Nimitz deploys first to the Western Pacific, providing security off the coast of South Korea during the 1988 Seoul Olympics. Precautionary positioning in case North Korea attempts to disrupt the Games. When the Olympics conclude without incident, the carrier transits south and west to the North Arabian Sea. Carrier Air Wing 9 begins round-the-clock surveillance and escort operations in the Persian Gulf. 14 Tomcats run continuous air patrols overhead. 3 Vikings sweep the surface for submarines and fast attack craft. E-2C Hawkeyes orbit at 25,000 feet, their rotating dome radars painting every vessel and aircraft within 250 miles. The Persian Gulf is one of the most operationally constrained environments on Earth for a supercarrier. The Strait of Hormuz, the only entrance and exit, is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, with shipping lanes separated by a 2-mile buffer. Iranian Silkworm anti-ship cruise missile batteries are positioned along the northern coast with clear firing lanes into the shipping channels. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps operates swarms of small armed speedboats, Baghmer class, capable of racing in at 40 knots to launch RPGs and small missiles at close range. Both contact mines and sophisticated magnetic influence bottom mines litter the approaches. Just months earlier, the frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts struck an Iranian mine that blew a 15-foot hole in her hull, nearly sank the ship. The Nimitz's aircraft fly escort missions directly above the tanker convoys as they transit the Strait of Hormuz and navigate the Gulf. SH-3 Sea King helicopters sweep ahead of the convoys, hunting for mines with sonar and visual detection. Their destroyers and cruisers screen the convoy flanks. Their Aegis systems and CIWS phalanx mounts tracking every Iranian fast boat within weapons range. For 4 months, the carrier group holds the line. Not a single reflagged tanker under Nimitz's protection is struck. The oil flows. Insurance rates stabilize. The global economy breathes. But the deployment exacts its own price. On November 30, 1988, during routine maintenance on the flight deck, a 20mm phalanx CIWS mount accidentally discharges. A burst of high-velocity rounds rakes across the deck and strikes a Ka-6D intruder tanker aircraft. Aviation fuel ignites. Fire engulfs the forward flight deck. 6 aircraft are damaged. 2 U.S. Navy sailors are killed instantly. Damage control teams fight the blaze while flight operations continue on the aft section of the deck. The Nimitz absorbs the loss and keeps operating. She returns to Bremerton on March 2, 1989. Ernest Will proves the strategic truth that defines carrier warfare. The nuclear flat top doesn't just fight wars. It keeps them from spreading. February 1993. The Gulf War ended 2 years ago, but its aftermath is still unresolved. Saddam Hussein remains in power. His Republican Guard still exists, and his Air Force, while shattered, still has enough aircraft to threaten Kurdish and Shia populations in the north and south of Iraq. Coalition forces have established 2 no-fly zones. Operation Northern Watch above the 36th parallel, and Operation Southern Watch below the 32nd parallel. Any Iraqi military aircraft that crosses into either zone will be destroyed without warning. The USS Nimitz deploys to the Persian Gulf to enforce the Southern Mandate. Carrier Air Wing 9 begins flying daily combat patrols over the vast expanse of southern Iraq. F-A-18 Hornets and F-14 Tomcats maintain constant presence above the exclusion zone, orbiting in designated combat air patrol stations for hours at a time, refueling from tankers, and cycling back to the Nimitz for recovery and relaunch. The pace is relentless. Iraqi anti-aircraft batteries track the coalition aircraft with radar. Iraqi surface-to-air missile systems illuminate them with targeting locks. Every sortie is a high-stakes game of provocation. Iraq testing how far it can push without triggering a retaliatory strike. Enforcing a no-fly zone over hostile territory requires sustained, round-the-clock air dominance, a mission that grinds through aircraft, fuel, weapons, and crew endurance at an extraordinary rate. Strike aircraft fly in pairs, carrying AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles, designed to detect and home in on enemy radar emissions. The tactical doctrine is straightforward. If an Iraqi radar operator illuminates a coalition aircraft with a targeting lock, the HARM launches automatically, riding the emitted radar beam like a highway straight down to the emitter antenna and destroying it along with the radar operators. This cat-and-mouse dynamic plays out day after day, week after week, with Iraqi air defense batteries constantly repositioning their mobile SAM launchers to avoid being targeted, while still attempting to intimidate coalition pilots. The Nimitz crews fly hundreds of combat sorties over the 6-month deployment. No Iraqi aircraft challenges the zone. Saddam's pilots have learned that crossing the line means death, but the SAM threat never stops. Pilots dodge radar locks on a daily basis. Electronic warfare officers and EA-6B prowlers jam Iraqi frequencies and lay down electronic countermeasure corridors. Every single mission over southern Iraq is a rehearsal for a full-scale war that could ignite at any moment. The SAM launches and hits, or if an Iraqi MiG makes a suicidal run across the line. Nimitz returns home on August 1, 1993. The no-fly zone holds. Operation Southern Watch will continue for another full decade. And when the full-scale invasion of Iraq finally comes in March 2003, the USS Nimitz is there for that too. March 2003. The invasion of Iraq. Operation Iraqi Freedom. The largest American military operation since Desert Storm. The USS Nimitz departs San Diego on March 3rd and crosses the Pacific at maximum speed, cutting a straight-line track through the western Pacific, through the Strait of Malacca, across the Indian Ocean, and into the Persian Gulf. By mid-April, she relieves USS Abraham Lincoln on station. Carrier Air Wing 11 is embarked, and this deployment will make naval aviation history. For the very first time, the two-seat FA-18F Super Hornet will enter combat. Boeing FA-18F Super Hornet. Length, 60 feet, 1 inch. Wingspan, 44 feet, 8 inches. Maximum speed, Mach 1.8. Combat radius, 449 nautical miles. It carries 17,750 pounds of ordnance distributed across 11 weapon stations. GBU-31 JDAMs. GBU-12 Paveway 2 laser-guided bombs. AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. AIM-120C AMRAAM beyond visual range missiles. AIM-99X Sidewinders for close-in combat. Its ANAPG-79 ASA radar represents a generational leap, an active electronically scanned array that can track and engage multiple air and ground targets simultaneously, while maintaining a low probability of intercept. The Super Hornets from VFA-14 Toffatters and VFA-41 Black Aces fly the opening strike waves into Iraq. Their targets span the entire spectrum of strategic and tactical warfare. Ba'ath Party headquarters complexes in Baghdad, presidential palace compounds in Tikrit. Republican Guard armored divisions dug into defensive positions along the Karbala Gap, and T-62 tank columns maneuvering south of Baghdad. On March 21st alone, the opening night of shock and awe, the Nimitz Air Wing drops hundreds of thousands of pounds of precision-guided ordnance. GBU-31 JDAMs, 2,000-pound GPS-guided bombs, fall through overcast skies and detonate within meters of their programmed coordinates. GBU-12 Paveway laser-guided bombs thread through urban canyons guided by designator pods to strike individual floors of targeted buildings. Carrier Air Wing 11 flies over 6,500 combat sorties during the deployment. The FA-18F Super Hornet proves itself devastatingly effective in every role the Navy asks it to fill. Air superiority patrols. Close air support for advancing Marine and Army ground forces. Suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses. Deep interdiction strikes against Iraqi command infrastructure hundreds of miles from the front line. The airframe is faster to turn than the Legacy Hornet, carries significantly more internal fuel, and can be reconfigured between roles on the flight deck in under an hour. The Nimitz returns to San Diego on November 5, 2003. She and CVW-11 received the 2003 Battle E, the Navy's highest unit readiness award, and the Flatley Award for Outstanding Carrier Aviation Achievement. The 28-year-old carrier has launched the newest weapon in the arsenal. The old ship has birthed the new era. July 2017. The Islamic State is dying. Its self-proclaimed Caliphate, which at its peak in 2014 controlled territory the size of Great Britain across Syria and Iraq, governed 8 million people, and generated billions of dollars from stolen oil and antiquities, is being crushed from every direction. Kurdish Peshmerga forces push from the mountains of northern Iraq. The Iraqi army, rebuilt and retrained by American advisors, advances from the east and south. Syrian democratic forces close in from the north of Syria. And from the waters of the Persian Gulf, the USS Nimitz launches the air campaign designed to break the Caliphate's spine. Carrier Strike Group 11 arrives in the U.S. Fifth Fleet area of operations loaded for sustained combat. CVW-11 is carrying maximum ordnance. The Argonauts of VFA-147 and the Black Knights of VFA-154 fly FA-18E single-seat Super Hornets. The Blue Diamonds of VFA-146 add another squadron of Hornets. And in a demonstration of joint force integration, the Death Rattlers of Marine Fighter Attack Squadron VMFA-323 embed directly into the Carrier Air Wing, bringing their own FA-18C Legacy Hornets to the fight. The Marines live, eat, and fly alongside Navy pilots. A seamless fusion that multiplies the strike group's sortie rate. Precision strike operations against an insurgent force embedded within civilian urban areas demand an extraordinarily disciplined targeting process. Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, JTACs, on the ground with coalition forces designate targets using laser pointers, infrared strobes, or GPS coordinates transmitted via encrypted radio. Targeting data uploads to aircraft through Link 16 Tactical Data Link. Pilots cross-check target identification visually or through their ATFLR targeting pods. advanced infrared and electro-optical systems capable of identifying a human figure from 40,000 feet. Only after positive target identification, collateral damage estimation against known civilian structures, and explicit authorization from the Combined Air Operations Center does the weapon release. BMFA-323 alone executes over 200 precision airstrikes during the 6-month deployment. The entire air wing drops over 200,000 pounds of guided ordnance on ISIS targets across Iraq and Syria. Vehicle convoys moving fighters and supplies between strongholds. Underground command bunkers. Weapons storage facilities. IED fabrication workshops. Tunnel networks connecting defensive positions in Mosul and Raqqa. Strikes directly enable the ground offensives that liberate Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city held by ISIS since 2014, and drive the fighters from Raqqa, their self-declared capital in Syria. Death Rattlers returned to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar in December 2017 with every pilot and every aircraft intact. Zero combat losses. The Nimitz has proven that even at 42 years old, an age at which most warships have been scrapped twice over, she can project more precision firepower over a sustained campaign than most nations on Earth can muster from all their military branches combined. Age is just a number when you carry a 4.5-acre flight deck and a nuclear heart that never needs refueling. March 26, 2025. The USS Nimitz departs San Diego for what the United States Navy officially announces will be her final operational deployment. She is 50 years old, the oldest active aircraft carrier in the world. Her nuclear reactors have been refueled once, a process that took 3 years in dry dock. Her hull has steamed millions of nautical miles. Her flight deck has launched and recovered hundreds of thousands of aircraft. Her replacement, the USS Gerald R. Ford CVN-78, the first of a new class, has been operational for 2 years. But the Navy has one more mission for the old warhorse, and it's aimed directly at the most powerful rival the United States has faced since the Soviet Union. The Nimitz transits the Western Pacific and enters the South China Sea in the spring. She conducts joint exercises with the Philippine Navy and the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force near Scarborough Shoal, the disputed reef and fishing ground that China claims as sovereign territory despite a 2016 international tribunal ruling that rejected Beijing's claims. Her FA-18E and FA-18F Super Hornets fly daily sorties within direct visual range of Chinese-built artificial islands bristling with radar arrays and missile launchers. In June, the strategic picture shifts dramatically. The Israel-Iran confrontation escalates beyond the proxy stage. Nimitz is redeployed through the Singapore Strait and the Malacca Strait into the Indian Ocean, reinforcing the U.S. Fifth Fleet for several months of heightened readiness in the Middle East. It's a demonstration of the supercarrier's defining advantage: global mobility. Within weeks, a 100,000-ton floating air base pivots from one theater to another, projecting power across 2 oceans without ever touching a port. The South China Sea is the most strategically contested waterway on Earth. Over $3.4 trillion in international trade passes through its shipping lanes every year, roughly 1/3 of all global maritime commerce. China has constructed 7 artificial islands in the Spratly Archipelago, each fortified with military-grade airstrips capable of handling fighter jets, phased array radar installations for early warning and tracking, HQ-9B surface-to-air missile batteries with 200-kilometer range, and YJ-12B anti-ship cruise missiles that can target vessels at distances exceeding 400 kilometers. Freedom of navigation operations by U.S. aircraft carriers directly challenge China's unilateral territorial claims and reinforce the principle that international waters and airspace remain open to all nations under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. By October, the Nimitz returns to the Pacific. She operates 230 kilometers northeast of Malaysia's Great Natuna Island, in waters increasingly patrolled by Chinese Coast Guard cutters and maritime militia vessels. Chinese ships shadow the strike group. Nimitz responds with multinational patrols alongside Philippine and Japanese warships. The message is delivered without a single radio transmission. This water belongs to no one nation, and the United States will sail wherever international law permits, for as long as it has carriers to sail. But the final deployment isn't without cost. During operations in the South China Sea, an FA-18F Super Hornet and an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter crash into the water within 30 minutes of each other. All crew members from both aircraft are rescued. Investigations are launched. The sea takes its toll, even on a legend's final ride. On December 16, 2025, the USS Nimitz glides into her home port of Bremerton, Washington for the last time. Her crew lines the rails in dress whites. Family members crowd the pier. 50 years of continuous service. 28 operational deployments. Hundreds of thousands of combat and training sorties. She has outlasted every enemy she's ever faced. She has survived every prediction of her obsolescence. Navy confirms her transfer to Norfolk Naval Shipyard beginning in April 2026 for the Ship Terminal Offload Program, the first step in her decommissioning. The USS Nimitz didn't just serve for 50 years. She defined what an aircraft carrier is supposed to be. A floating sovereign territory that can reshape the balance of power anywhere on Earth within 72 hours. From the burning sands of Iran to the contested waters of the South China Sea, CVN-68 answered every call her nation made. She launched rescues, shot down enemy fighters, shielded tankers, enforced no-fly zones, debuted new weapons systems, and crushed a terrorist caliphate. She is the standard against which every carrier that follows will be measured. This video earned your respect. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next mission brief is already loading.